video, we will log in using only our email with NextJS and a service called Stytch. So Stytch is a software as a service similar to Auth0 and Okta that can help us authenticate using different ways, via email, via SMS, and a bunch of other ways. So in this tutorial we will log in via magic links. So the first step is to create an account and log in. The test account is free to use forever, and the live account has $100 in free credits to use. Now let's log in. So I successfully authenticated. We have here a guide on how to authenticate a user. We have also other examples using different programming languages and frameworks. In this example we will use NextJS, but we will not use this given example. We will create it ourselves. So this is a pre-created NextJS app that can help us jumpstart our logic into using Stytch. You can find this repository in the description of this video. The contents are really simple, so we have two files here, index.js and login. In index.js we are showing just a message, you are not authenticated, and in our login we are displaying a simple form that contains only an email as an input. Both of these are using the layout component, which is just some HTML that is using Bootstrap in the headers, and a header on top that shows two links, home and login. So if we click to home, we can see you are not authenticated. If we click to login, it will show us the form. So it is pretty simple. Now let's try to log in and send a request to Stytch. So the first step is to create here a submit function. We will add that function here. On submit we will call a submit function. This will have an event, and we will prevent default. So we need this line because we don't want to refresh the page once we submit our form. And now let's get the email. So there are multiple ways to get the email. I will use it like this. So I will get first the form, which is equal to new form data. I'll pass event.target inside, and this form can get all the entries that are submitted in this form. Here we get the email, but we need to format it in a certain way. So the way that we want it is like this. So we will get the inputs are equal to object from entries form entries here, and that should be it. So if we console log now the inputs, let's see what we show once we submit this form. Let's inspect, go to the console, and if I put a random email here, sign in, we can see that the format is how we want it. So we got the format that we want. Now we need to create the API. So inside the API directory, I will create a JavaScript file. I'll call it login. Here I will export a default function handler, not here, like this, that will contain a request and a response. So NextJS works like this. If we create a handler function inside the API directory, we can send an API call to API/login. So in our login.js file here, we can send a request. I'll make this asynchronous, and we can send await fetch to API/login. And as information, first let's send the method is post, we need also the content type, so headers here, content type, application JSON, and the information that we want to send are in the body. We will use JSON stringify and we will send the inputs, and that should be it. So this is a post request to API/login, and we will handle it in this handler function here. So the first step here is to install a package. Let's install npm install Stytch. So this package will help us connect with the Stytch dashboard. So let's create a directory here. I'll call it lib, and inside I'll create a file client.js. In this file we will import all as Stytch from Stytch, and we will export a constant client which is equal to new Stytch client with a capital C, and inside we will add these configurations. So we need the project ID, we need a secret, and we need the environment. So here we will use Stytch envs. We have two values, live and test. In our case we will use the test environment, and these values we will get them in the dashboard of Stytch. Go to API keys, and here is the project ID which I will copy. I will paste it here, and we need the secret which I will copy here, and I will paste it here. Don't use my credentials because after this video I will change these values. So we exported the client and we will use it to our login here. So let's import client from the library, and we will use it here. So to use that client we need to make this function asynchronous, and we will get response which is equal to await client magic links email, and we will call a function login or create. So this is the function that we have to call in order to send a magic link and to login using that link. Inside this login or create function we need to send an email, login magic link URL, and sign up magic link URL. So for the email we will get it from the request, so this value will be request.body.email. So this is the email that we want to send an email, and this login magic link URL and sign up magic link URL, we have to set them up in our dashboard here, and we have here in the configuration redirect URLs. We don't have a redirect URL for the moment, so let's create a redirect URL. So the URL that I will be using is http localhost port 3000 /API/authenticate. So you can put whatever URL that you want. I chose this URL, and we have three options here. We need login and sign up, but I can select all of them. So I won't use invite, but I will create it regardless. So I'll confirm here, and we have three links. So for login, sign up, and invite. I'll copy this login URL and I will paste it here, and that should be it. So this is the request that we will send to Stytch, and let's console log. I will console log the response here, and I will send the response so as a JSON, and that should be it. So we completed this function, and now we need to send an email in this form. And for that I will go to generator.email. So I will generate a random email. I'll copy this generated email and I will put it here. If I type sign in, we should get an email right now, and indeed I got an email. So welcome to my first project, and this is the email template that we got. So if we click this link, we will redirect to this localhost port 3000 /API /authenticate, which for the moment we don't have that API. So let's create it now. Authenticate. Here we will import the client as we did with the login, and we will create a function, async function handler, that will contain a request and a response, and I'll export it default handler like this. So what do we want to add inside this function? So when we redirect to that link, we will get a token in request.query. So when we redirect, Stytch will send us also a token, and we will use that token to authenticate. And the way that we can authenticate is like this. We will await the client with magic links, authenticate with the token, and that should be it. So it is this simple. Still we may have problems, so I will wrap this with a try catch, and so the catch here, and once we get an error, so we will get an error string, so error string, which is equal to JSON stringify the error, and we will return a response with a status of 400 and a JSON of error string like this. So this is the case when we want to authenticate, so the token is invalid, and if it is valid, we will go inside this try, and we want to store the authenticated user in the cookies, and for that we will use a package, so npm install next iron session. So we will use this package to store it in the cookies as a session cookie. So the package was installed, and now in our library we need to add a function with session, and here we will export a constant with session. We need also to import here with iron session from next iron session. And the way that we will use it is that we will get a handler as a parameter. So we will not import any handler function. And once we got this handler function, we will call with iron session. We'll pass the handler function, and we need to add some options. We need a password, we need a cookie name, and we need some cookie options. For the cookie options, we need to add here HTTP only to true. So this is required because the frontend won't be able to access these cookies if it is HTTP only to true. Only the backend, so our APIs, will be able to access the authenticated user, and that is a more secure way. So for the password, we need a complex password, at least 32 characters long. I put it like this, so this needs to be complex, not this simple. And for the cookie name, I will name it auth user. And that's it. So we created this function, and we will use it here. When we export the handler function, we will wrap it now with session, like this. And we need to import this with session from our library. So with this, we will be using sessions in this function, and let's use them now. So request that session, we will destroy it as a first step, and then we will set, so request session, we will set the user, so the authenticated user, and we will store only the user ID for the moment. So user ID response user ID. So this response has a bunch of options here, as we can see: user ID, session, method ID, etc, etc. We want only the user ID here, and we will save it. So await here, request session save, and that's it. This will be stored in the cookies, and what is left is to return response redirect to the main page. So after we go to this link, we will add the sessions, and we will redirect to this index.js. Let's try it out now. So I generated a new email, which I will copy. I'll paste it here, click sign in, and I'll get an email here to login. So I'll click login, and I'll get redirected to you are not authenticated. So we have to change this message now, but for the moment, let's inspect, go to application, and we will have a session cookie here. So this auth user is set, and this contains information about our authenticated user. So let's show it here right now. And the first step is to get the user from the session. So we need to import here with session from our library, and we need to export a constant get server side props. So we need this function to get properties from our APIs. We cannot get the cookies from the frontend because the cookie is HTTP only, as we said. So we need to send a request to the APIs to get it here. And for that, we need to use with session here. So I will create another function here, get server side props handler, which I will use it here. So get server side props handler. So I did this change only to add to wrap this with session here. And now this function can use sessions, so I'll make this asynchronous, and this will have a request inside. So it will have some props as parameters, but we need only the request. And now our user will be equal to request session get the user. If it's not set, we will return null, and I'll create a variable props, which will contain the user here, and I will return the props. So this function will modify the props inside this component that we have here. So we have props here, but since we modified them here, we can get the user from the props like this. So once again, we will add the with session here, and we will get the user from the backend, and we will modify the props in this component, and we will add the user there. Here we can console log to see if it works. If I inspect here and see the console, we should be able to see the user ID here. So it is working, and now our message will be like this. So if the user is set, I will add a question mark here, then I will display a message. Otherwise, I will display you are not authenticated. And the message when the user is authenticated, I will show it like this: you are logged in with ID. I will display here user.user_ID. If I save this and I will see it here, I'm logged in with this ID. So that should be it. This is how we can log in using only our email with the Stytch service. Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Thank you.